Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto anime review. This one's going to be for episode 285. So this is the second last episode of our adaptation of the Uchiha and the Heavenly Stardust light novel. That's also, of course, at the same time being done in the manga. I think there was a new manga chapter of this story released at the same time that actually covered some of the same content. So if you want to check that out over on Viz, that would be a pretty decent idea. And you can see straight away some of the changes in that, like, all three versions of the story are different in certain, like, specific ways, but fundamentally are still telling the main story. It does seem that for the most part the two adaptations have mainly differed from the light novel, because they've chosen to only do the middle book of a 3-book trilogy, and like basically just use the Kakashi, the first book, as background kind of setup for this one, and then I guess they'll really quickly wrap up what happens with, like, regard to what the third book is in the next episode, which is the last episode of this arc. So, you know, in a way, like, beyond that, the main difference is obviously your typical adaptation stuff of expanding on certain scenes, cutting out others, sort of consolidating kind of certain scenes, grouping them together to kind of get more out of them, so you don't need to have, like, constant cuts back and forth. So in this sense, like, the Sakura Sasuke plot is a lot of a kind of mystery, figuring stuff out, and in the anime, the main thing that they've done with that is they've just, you know, decided that instead of them meeting up, like, say, 5 or 6 times, like happens in the novel, to figure out the various different stages of this plot, they instead meet up, like, 3-4 times. So they cut out a few of them and have them figure out more each time. And that's, I think, a pretty decent approach. Because one of the main scenes that you saw in this episode that was different than both of the other adaptations was the scene where Sasuke is confronted by Zansul, and we get the reveal of sort of other dinosaurs for, like, the first time really in the arc. And in both the light novel and the manga adaptation, this is a very brief scene where it basically starts off with the whole "this is Edo Tensei, it's a forbidden jutsu" sequence. But you'll note in the anime there's a whole giant dialogue sequence before that, where they discuss the ultra particles, and that part of Zansul's goal was actually the ultra particles, and they try to better clarify and explain what's actually been kind of happening start to finish with the whole dinosaur resurrection plot. And they basically explain that, okay, the whole scene with Sakura from the beginning of the episode wasn't just a kind of a Sasuke kind of romance kind of a teasing kind of scene. It was also to highlight that, you know, there are trees over there that have specific fruit that grow on them, and stuff like that. They have trace amounts of the ultra particles in them because they grow next to basically where the ultra particles are being kept. They're the sort of main power source for why such a sort of powerful jutsu is able to be performed by a character ultimately revealed to be Gigi, who doesn't seem like massively powerful, because it's ultimately using trace amounts of ultra particles. And so the whole intent here is to build up an army for Rediku. Now, this is where I think this will be my main criticism of the adaptation, is I'm not sure how strongly, just from the adaptation, I feel about Rediku, given that we don't have a lot of the setup, and we've only had 1 or 2 scenes referencing what Kakashi is doing with the prince from the first book. And it's almost surprising when they do show you a visual from that, like at the very start of this episode, that, like, they find out, Sakura finds out that basically the Prime Minister is on the move, controlling the actions of the kind of the queen, you know, basically. So that's always going to be like an interesting kind of, like, point in this of, like, you know, given that they've made this choice, how much of that do they actually show? Now, I still maintain it is weird, because I think they probably could have chosen to, if they wanted to, made a full, lengthier arc that includes all three books. And I think people would have been relatively happy with that as a group of, like, what, 15 or so episodes. So it is odd that they just chose to, like, yeah, we'll just do the middle ones and do whatever with the other ones. Like, that's an odd choice in terms of taking pretty relatively meaningful content and, like, cutting it like that. Because, like I said, there are things I like that extended Zonsel scene where the plot gets a little bit more heavily explained to you about this is the connection of everything. The chickens as being the sort of, like, dragons basically kind of distant ancestors to sort of chickens. The fruits from the area around where the ultra particles are being the power source. Gigi being the one to actually perform the kind of different kind of resurrection jutsu on these animals. The fact that this overall is about the idea that Zansul is loyal to the Prime Minister of Rediku, who wants to attack and utilize basically an army of dinosaurs to, win any battle. This, all kind of comes together quite nicely in this scene, whereas I actually do feel in the novel, they almost treat their reveals as being too much of, like, we're revealing the secret now, that it almost takes away from the kind of readability of the story. Because I was shocked going back to it to find out that, like, oh yeah, that Zonsel scene is actually really small compared to what we get here. But that's that. But yeah, like I said, there's other scenes in this episode, unlike last week's episode where I felt like it was just one long scene that was most of the episode. Definitely a return to form here. We did get the interesting scene with Sakura and one of Sasuke's other cellmates, and she obviously has the ring on, and he just asked him, okay, like, tell me about your husband, and she, as far as she's aware, he doesn't know it's Sasuke. So she just describes him, and it's nice to get this, just her describing, in a way, what she views Sasuke as from, like, a broad perspective. And he's kind of like, oh yeah, that does describe Sasuke. And it's an interesting one, because you think, like, oh, what way are they going with this? Are they trying to be like, she just described him so perfectly that even someone who doesn't know Sasuke that well can figure out that she means Sasuke from her description? But no, he overheard Gigi and Sasuke talking. That's how he knows. But we move on to the idea of, like, oh, he has been thinking about you. This explains a few things. That why when he sits here, why he always looks out the window over there. Now that I see you, I know exactly why that is. And he just leaves without kind of fully explaining what he means. And then Sakura goes to look out the window and sees that the trees, on plants outside are basically sort of the color of her hair. They're not, sakura blossoms, but they are basically what they describe as an almond kind of plant thing. That's actually a very, very similar color, and it's just this proof that he does think about her when she's not around, which is something she's kind of wondered about, because we've very much tried to tackle the kind of topic of, in a way, how does this relationship work when the two of them aren't around each other so much, and just having these moments where it's revealed that, they do miss each other a lot, but it can work even though they're not around each other as much. But this all leads up to the gradual sort of figuring out of all of this, where Sakura figures out that, like, oh, the other connection with the kind of constellations and tail beasts is it's also the hand signs as well. And there's also a connection with the game that we were playing from the episode before. Like, that's going to be the pattern of hand signs that gets used. While Sasuke actually locates the area where basically, like, the meteorite with the ultra particles actually fell, because he's up on kind of like top of the building. He sees it from up there. So together they realized, okay, we got to go there and perform this hand sign sequence, and that will get us the ultra particles. And so we get that, and again, there's a nice little kind of romance scene between the two of them, where Sasuke actually kind of asks her, like, do you want like an actual kind of like ring, not one that I just kind of quite quickly put together in the kind of heat of the moment? And she's kind of like, I've thought about it, maybe I do. But she's kind of like, this one is fine for now because, just doing my job a lot of the times it would get in the way, so I'd have to take it off a lot anyway. And, it's just kind of highlighting the kind of significance of, like, this one that you gave to me just kind of, in a way, on a whim, is kind of more meaningful than kind of almost anything else. So that's very, symbolic and representative of their relationship, as, they just discuss the idea that, like, even though he's away so long, he never worries about their relationship as such. They kind of covered the idea that they think about each other a lot, but it does still work. And you get the moment where he finally just does open up about stuff, like, he has some regrets about the idea that, he does, when he does finally come home after his trips away and sees that, oh, Sarada is quite a bit taller, or Sakura's changed her hair, just to, the signal to him that time has passed. It makes him kind of wish, he could be around more often. And it's just that idea of, like, going back to what was said, and I think one of the earlier episodes, the idea that, like, after this, he's going to, I think, make an effort to kind of be around more often. And, we're developing this relationship in the right way, ultimately. But anyway, within the plot, we do get the ultra particles here. It's a pretty nice scene. You can see the kind of, like, almost like frozen lake with the kind of meteorite star effect. Is very cool. The Sakura does the hand signs, and a pillar of light shoots up. And when she goes over to it, she gets... It's kind of weird looking. It is described this way in the light novel as well, of just this kind of ball of kind of like seals around what is effectively like a piece of a meteorite almost, that's giving off a ton of energy. And this is where they realize, okay, stuff is going on in the prison, stuff's going down, and Sakura heads back to the prison while Sasuke ends up confronting Zansul, and we get that scene, which, like I said, was, I think, nicely extended here in the anime. But then on the Sakura side of things, we see her kind of saving a lot of the prisoners as stuff happens here, because, of course, the couple of dinosaurs that have been created already are beginning to sort of rampage here at this point. The plan is being put into motion. So Sakura saves some people. She can't find Zansul here, of course. And this is where she meets up with Gigi. And, this is the big reveal scene for him as being part of the plan as well. That, some of these little details we found out about him, that, like, oh, he also has, like, a fiancée. We find out that her name is, Margot, I think he says here. But that she has died, and he wants to kind of resurrect her ultimately. That's why he's kind of working here in the intent of finding a way to somehow resurrect her at a certain point. That's why he's been kind of forced into working with Zansul here. So there's at least some motivation, and we'll get into more, I suppose, in the last episode. But it's also revealed he is the one using the jutsu to revive the dinosaurs. Because Sasuke, with his Sharingan, figures out that, like, oh wait, looking at Zansul closer, it's not just the whole thing with his eyes. He just doesn't have chakra that would make him come across as being like a decently powerful shinobi. He isn't. So what's going on here? And the reveal is that it's him, Zansul, masterminding things, working with Gigi. So what happens here is Gigi kind of surprises Sakura, stabs her with the kind of and this kind of incapacitates her. But the reason this making sense is that because it's the same really, really bad poison from earlier on that affected Sasuke when he was bitten, or when he was scratched, I think it was, in those earlier episodes. And this is meant to be the explanation for why she can't immediately just activate her crazy healing stuff, is because the poison got in before she was able to, adapt to it as such, which is different than her finding Sasuke being affected by the poison and being able to work against it herself. So he then uses the power of the ultra particles to basically revive all of the fossils that are around the place. So this is where we get our huge mass of other dinosaurs, including some of the really, really big ones. And this is the army that is going to fight for the Prime Minister of Rediku. And then the kind of big ending scene is basically just that Sakura is getting completely crushed as the building begins to collapse here. And the setup is Sakura going to be okay here? Now, obviously, you know, she does ultimately have these kind of healing jutsus, and she is extremely durable as a character, but she has been sort of put in a position where she can't seem to activate those abilities, like, straight away. So, it's a somewhat tense situation, but you sort of know, like, they're not killing off an important character in a scene like this, necessarily. But still, there's some nice kind of intensity to what's going on here, which definitely does work. So, yeah, one episode to go. Obviously, it's going to be a lot of action, but I think I'm more interested in just how they're going to wrap up the plot, because, like I said, there is a third book in this as well. Now, I haven't read that book yet. What's it called? Naruto's Story and the Spiral Destiny. Because in the books, you know, the whole idea is it's not just that they give Naruto the Ultra Particles and he's healed. There's another stage to the story. So I'm wondering, are they just going to, like, wrap it up here by, like, the Ultra Particles just work in the way, like, you maybe expect them to work, and there's no need for this extra story, or what, and then how much of the Rediku stuff are we really going to kind of see in all of this? Because there's a whole section, like, towards the end of, like, the Kakashi book that feels quite important, and you're just kind of, like, not focusing on it. Like, are we just going to quickly cut to, and here's the prince, and, you know, Kakashi just right at the end to wrap things up? I want to see that happen. Because I don't want the plot in this adaptation to just be, like, ignored, that, like, Rediku didn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things. So there's a lot of pressure, I think, on the next episode. Now, obviously, for a lot of people, they're going to be like, you know, after this we get back into the manga adaptation content, and especially because the manga has been better the last couple of weeks, months, people are more inclined to be like, yeah, I really want to get back to this kind of as soon as possible. It just kind of more speaks to the idea of, I'd almost have preferred a bunch of the anime original arcs that we got sort of before this to be a little shorter, if we could have expanded this book novel adaptation out a little bit more. Because the novels, while never maybe the most amazing thing in Naruto, do often feel like they have a little bit more to them than some of the anime original arcs that they do. So at least there's, like, the potential with these ones. But anyway, so yeah, just to make it clear, you know, very good episode after, I think, a weaker episode 3. Definitely did exactly what it needed to do as the second to last episode. Had a lot of nice scenes with the, you know, Sasuke-Sakura relationship, while also kind of revealing a lot of stuff about the plot. The final adaptation point I will make is that in the novel, the scene that we got from, like, oddly, I think, at the end of last episode, where Sasuke basically, like, you know, deactivates the control over Menno, actually happens in the Zansul scene. Like, the Zansul scene goes from Edo Tensei to, like, Menno attack, and that's the point in the novel at which Sasuke, like, gains control of Menno as, like, he has shifted his allegiances, whereas that's already happened in the anime, and they haven't kind of, like, gotten around to that yet. So I'm guessing they're just kind of, like, again, reordering this, and we'll see if that order actually works. So there are my thoughts on the episode. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were about what I had to say. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.